From Illinois Public Media, this is News, Brews, and Beats. Today's discussion, raising Black children.
I want to provide that presence of authority as a dad, but then I still want you to still be yourself.
So I'm here to guide them to their purpose, their plan, and their passion.
From changing parenting styles.
It's a different generation of parenting. You have to be on top of social media. You have to be on top of their friends.
My parenting style was a republic, not a dictatorship or a democracy.
To reassuring children who are treated like adults.
Talking to your girls and your boys about their bodies and making sure that they understand that this is their space.
To celebrating Black family joy.
The joy of having that little boy in the home was worth it all.
And so just to see that growth in my grandchildren in the midst of trying to heal.
Two panels of parents hold an emotional and enlightening conversation at Poor Brothers Tap Room on April 17th in downtown Champaign. This is Reginald Hardwick, Illinois Public Media, News and Public Affairs Director. My co-moderator is Tracy Parsons, Community Relations Manager and Facilitator of Community Coalition in Champaign. We started with spoken word artist Missy Richland and her poem, Missing Ingredient.
Do you realize what our world is coming to? We literally pull out our phones even if we witness someone abusing you. What happened to our morals and accountability? I guess that went out the window right along with responsibility. It's Black versus white, it's man versus woman, it's parent versus child, and it's even homeless versus people who get a payday. All we're good at is fighting each other every single day. It's exhausting. Some of you don't even see me as a human being. You just see me as a figure that turns out poetry like a machine. And no matter what anyone says, we all have issues, but all we do is point and blame, not realizing that we calling each other everything but the birth name. There is now a I hate you and I want you to die mentality. Not understanding that we are raising kids up showing them nothing but brutality. Where is the love? Where is the I support you? Where is the we need to agree? Oh, I forgot. We all just walking around refusing to see. We have lost the most important ingredient in this world. Most of us don't even have it, so we can't even teach our boys and girls. Look at each other. No, I'm serious. I want y'all to look at each other. What do you see? Where do you think we are headed? And please don't say hell, because see, that's already on this planet. I'm tired of talking and I want to see some action. I want days where we treat each other like human beings. I want days where we stand up for exactly what we mean, because this life we live in, it is not a game. So if we don't come together, we won't be able to stand through any weather. So that missing ingredient, do y'all even know what it is? That missing ingredient is called compassion. Now let's bring that back so we can produce some real action. And I have spoken. Thank you.
Right now we're going to get right into it and to talk about parenting children, Black children in particular. It is important for us to have a myriad of parenting examples. So joining Tracy on the panel up front from left to right, Dr. Dynesha Grissom. She is the founder of YMG Psychological Services, who provides services to children, adults, and emerging adults. Next to her on my left, her right, is Todd Kato, Assistant Director in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions at the University of Illinois, and his wife, Dr. Carolyn Randolph-Kato, Visiting Associate Director of Arts Impact Assessment at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and they are the parents of 3 children. Thank all of our guests for joining us. And over here with me is Cynthia Smith. She's a mother who is now raising her 3 teenage grandchildren after one of her daughters passed away, and she has some insights on raising Black children over generations. And Cynthia, thank you for joining me. And we kind of rearranged our little format a little bit, and we're going to be talking a little bit later. And those of you watching here at Poor Brothers, if you can text questions for any of our guests, the number to text is 217-803-0945. 217-803-0730. Again, 217-803-0730. Tracy has our first question.
Thanks, Reginald. So we always have a planning meeting when we have our guests, and those discussions are so insightful. And in our limited time here, we really won't be able to pull out all the great things that our panelists have to offer. So I encourage you to talk with them, gain their insight. So first question to our couple. You are here representing a couple raising black kids, a unique space, especially today. Talk to us a little bit about your philosophies, how you manage and parent your children, and then you disclosed something that you called mid-motion. So I definitely want you to incorporate that in your response.
Well, can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Excellent. I would describe my parenting, my approach to parenting in the same way that I would describe the summary of my life, which is also titled after one of my favorite hip hop albums, entitled The Beautiful Struggle. And the beautiful part comes with the gift and the blessing of having a child or children, because I recognize that just the process of actually having a child is not easy for everyone. And so to even be blessed enough to produce life in that way is a gift in and of itself and a blessing. And so that's the beautiful part, right? But then the struggle part comes from simply recognizing that as a human being who has made mistakes, I recognize that there are a few of those mistakes that I would rather not have my children make. And so some of my parenting comes from trying to prevent as much of that as I can, but recognizing that whether or not they make the same mistakes that I do, they're still gonna make some mistakes. It's just that my hope is that they won't make some of the more, what some might consider to be the crazier mistakes, right, that have long-lasting impacts. And so that is how I would summarize my approach.
And I would say that my approach is about self-awareness, and I think of self-aware in three ways: as a facilitator, as an example, and as a guide. So as a facilitator, you know, I'm the person that is providing the biological, social, primordial waters out of which they're coming. So I need to make sure that they have a fertile soil within me. So that means guarding my mind, guarding my heart, making sure that I'm doing all the things that are necessary to cultivate a healthy environment for them while they're inside of me internally in the womb. And then outside of me is helping to facilitate their connection to home. What does that mean to be a part of a family? And then beyond that, looking beyond their infancy into their latter years is looking at their development in connection to other human beings. As an example, I recognize that I'm the prototype. I'm the prototype for how they understand God. I'm the prototype for how they understand themselves. I'm the prototype for how they understand other people. So I really have to help them to understand and give them that space to develop a healthy self-identity. And then finally, as guide, I'm here to simply guide them. So I recognize my humanity. That means my shortcomings, that means my successes, the things that I do well. So I'm here to guide them to their purpose, their plan, and their passion. So that's really my goal, and so that they can get to their promise. So that's how I see my role. And as far as the mid-motions, that's really one of the ways that Todd and I connect in. So we call it midnight emotions, and we just call it mid-motions. When we can't sleep, when something's on our heart, we usually start to have a dialogue and a conversation, and part of that time is really talking through our experiences with our children, what we're seeing in their lives, what we're noticing about them, and talking about how to wrap around each and every one of them.
Facts.
Cynthia, you've raised two generations of black children. What are the greatest challenges of raising young black women now versus in the 1970s and 80s?
80s. Not that old. Well, for me, that first generation, my birth children, I was still a young woman, a very young woman, and we grew up together, and I had to learn on the fly. So there was no preparation for that. I made a lot of mistakes, but what I kept trying to do is try. I educated myself, I tried to be a better person, I tried to instill in them the things that I would have wanted to be instilled in me. Now, growing up in the 70s, that was a whole nother ball game, and so the challenges that I faced, I tried to steer my children away from it, and those fears that Todd talked about and being self-aware, if you don't bring that into the discussion, especially being a single parent, there's nobody to bounce that stuff off of. And so you have to be very aware and very cognizant of what you're doing, because there's nobody to reel you back in when you get to 100 over a little bitty thing. And so as I learned and grew as a person, not as a parent, but I had to grow as a person first in order to take on the challenge that I have in front of me today. And that is, it has been the greatest challenge, not inflicting what I thought was my baggage onto my grandchildren, that fear of the things that happened with their mother and being overly protective. I had to step back and deal with my own thing and my own insecurities and be willing. The main thing is to be willing to see things a different way and see them the way the children might respond, taking their feelings, emotions, traumas into consideration when I say certain things, when I do certain things, and how I parent them overall. Just making sure that they are intact with a belief system. They might not believe what I believe totally, but having a belief system that kind of fuels them and drives them and encouraging them. So my role mainly for this second generation is to educate them, enlighten them, encourage them, and just be that sounding board, and always being willing to listen to them when I say something crazy or pull me back from my own issues and my own grief, and being willing to say, wait a minute, that wasn't cool. Now you need to go back. You need to be woman enough to go back and say this, and this. We'll have conversations, like I'll go into my oldest granddaughter's bedroom and say, you know what, Granny was kind of off when she said that. You know, and be willing and accept that, you know, and not see it as a weakness, but as a strength in order to pull the strength out of them. And so that's my approach.
All right, Dr. Grissom, do your 30-second elevator speech on your work,
Okay.
and then bring in the students, the young folks, what they're telling you today about their world and how they're navigating those things.
Okay. So my name is Dr. Dynesha Grissom. I'm a psychologist at YMG Psychological Services. And I meet with the entire span of ages, so from childhood to late adulthood. When I meet with a lot of teens, I would say a lot of the challenges that they're having, one, is connecting with their adults, whoever's parenting them, connecting with them. And some of the themes that I've already picked up out of what some of the parents have talked about is, one, kind of parenting out of fear. So we're talking about Black children in particular. There are a lot of fears, there are a lot of concerns, there are a lot of questions that we have as parents. I'm also a parent, that oftentimes we get caught up in trying to make sure that they don't make the same mistakes that we make, and it becomes a heavy hand. And so I love the poet, I'm sorry I forgot your name, but compassion is what's missing. Recognizing that our children have humanity and that they're going to make mistakes. There are some mistakes, of course, we can protect them from. So setting healthy boundaries, making sure that they're in the right spaces at the right time and not in the wrong spaces, and we know where they are, because the reality is that this world is not for us. We still are under oppression. We are still discriminated against. We still experience racism. So imagine as adults, when we experience these things, imagine what our kids experience. So going into a school, into a classroom, where a teacher could care less about whether you learn, whether you receive any information. They are there, not necessarily just to collect a paycheck, but they don't care about your black child. And I'm Dr. Grissom. I've experienced it as a parent who has degrees, has labels, and I've experienced schools not interested in us being a part of the school system. And so I tell people oftentimes, I walk my little nappy-headed self into a schoolroom, into a schoolhouse, and I'm not greeted. The face that I get until I say, oh, I'm Dr. Grissom, until I say that and they recognize, oh, that name is familiar from the IEPs and the psychological evaluations, then the attitude changes, but not too much. And so me with some degrees and some labels, if that's the way that I'm received, I can imagine how others are received. And so I think it's very, very important that we connect with our children and we make sure that we're not hiding things from them. We need to talk to them age appropriately, but we need to explain to them and talk to them about their experiences so that they can vocalize them and they can talk to us when they do have and encounter those issues.
So do the kids come right out? Yeah, thank you. Go ahead. So do the kids come right out and say, I can't talk to my adult in my life?
Oh yeah, a lot of them will say that they feel like they'll disappoint their parents, or they feel like their parents don't hear them. And I get it. We do speak different languages. Our exposure to technology, our exposure to the world, social media is completely different than what our kids have. You know, just the little thing of our kids, it's a big thing now, and some parents get really offended. I'm probably one of those. When your kid walks up to you and says, bruh. And you're like, oh, I'm not your bruh. Just little cultural differences like that. I mean, there are some things. So what I encourage parents to do, instead of leaning or instead of not having compassion for your child and rejecting the bruh, recognizing that they're saying bruh because they feel connected and close to you. That's what's happening. They're saying, I feel so close and comfortable with you, I can say bruh, you know. And then when they're done with their bruh, you know, X, Y, and Z happened. All right, I'm cool with that, but don't call me bruh. So being aware that, yes, kids do come to me and say, I'm having a hard time connecting with my parents. Now, they don't say that. They don't speak those words. But one of the things that I do, I love telehealth. Telehealth is beautiful. It gives access. But there's nothing like having someone in my office, people sitting on the couches. And one of the first things I do, I always have people go in before me. And so I'll stand outside the door, have a seat, and I'll watch where people sit. I'll watch how kids lean into one parent, mean mug the other, or when one is talking, they'll look away. And so all of those nonverbals, that's information. And so I can tell when a kid is leaning into one parent and caressing on that one, and they're playing, and they have this little sidebar, and then the other one is sitting, my office is not that big, but the other one's sitting way across from the dyad or even triad. You can tell there's some distance, there's some space there, they're not connecting.
So, Katos, I like that, Katos, all right. So, you know, we are talking about black children today. How do you instill the pride, the importance of being black themselves, and the strength in that when everything in the world and society tells them that they're less than? How do you instill the pride in themselves with your children?
Okay, I'll go first this time. I would say, first off, teaching them their history and not starting just at at slavery and ending at civil rights. We have a history pre that. And that history is American history. It's American culture. And so teaching them that everything that you see from the stoplight to the obelisk in Washington, D.C., to neuroplasticity, that is all coming from the ways that we've understood consciousness or the descent into the Amun-Ra. So teaching them that and then teaching them the language around microaggression. What does that look like? What does racism look like? How to speak to your peers, how to even speak to your teachers. So I do a lot of pushing in, and I did that with my children. We did that together. We would go in for Black History Month and provide curriculum, and we would teach them how to do architecture and art. When they opened the museum in DC, we had the children doing toothpicks, and that teaches others to appreciate Black history and culture as well. So for me, it's really about giving them a strong sense of identity by teaching them their history, making sure that it goes all the way back, and making those connections to help them know today your Black culture is a value. It is the biggest gross domestic product that is circulated both internally and externally. So don't ever forget that what you come from and what you know is key and vital to you, and it can get you very, very far. You have a unique perspective. And I'll say also, I'm trained as a Black feminist, so that I provide the language for understanding the world around you so he can look at power and how power operates in different machinations around the world and locally here in his everyday.
That's why I wanted her to lead off, man. No, seriously, I mean, you know, who you connect with is important, right? We talk about raising children, but who you are, you know, in the house with, if you all are blessed, once again, we're talking about another blessing, right, of being in the house together as a unit, and who you connect with is half the battle, right? And then when you have the children, of course, you are able to kind of live it out. That's really how I try to empower my children, is just by simply living it out. My presence is part of it, but of course there are conversations that will be had. Of course, our oldest is 15, so our kids are 15, 5, and 2. So there's a big gap between number 1 and 2. And the 15-year-old right now was kind of the barometer, right? Because he's of age, right? The bruh thing that you mentioned earlier, that irritates her all day. But for me, I'm a man, right? So it's like, okay, I don't get as offended, right? But I'm like, I'm not your bruh either, but, you know, I know you want to be my friend, but a few more years down the road, you know, we'll be friends. But, you know, I don't check him as much, though, with it, right? I kind of let it slide, but, you know. But I just try to live it out, just the bottom line. I try to show him that as a Black man, I am responsible, I have self-control, and I have dignity, period. And so being faithful, right, and monogamous, right, that's a part of it, because exposure to things that they're seeing online is one thing. Sex, right, we all know that. The phones have everything in them, and so showing them how to engage with the opposite sex as a male, because we have 2 boys and a girl. But again, because the oldest one is the barometer right now, he's of age, he's seeing everything I do, listening to what I say, right, watching how I walk, right, and how I treat people, then I'm all forever conscious of that, because as I mentioned earlier, there's a fear component that said, I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did, so I'm conscious of most of the time how I talk and who I'm talking to and how I'm addressing that individual, because I know he's watching. And so I just try to live it out. That's just the bottom line. But it's nice to be in relationship and partnership with someone who does have the critical lens which she brings to the table to help empower them in those other capacities, teaching the history and things like that. So it just works quite well. And I think that so far, so good, but we'll see, because the kids will be, you know, they'll tell us how we did, you know, when they become adults, you know.
Yes, they will.
I'm serious, like I think about that, like I always imagine that if my child or any of my children ever become stand-up comedians, right?
God, no.
You know the first person that's gonna get roasted is the parents, and so what are they gonna say about you, right? And so I'm thinking about that as kind of a subconscious thing in the back of my mind too, so.
I don't know why when you said that, I started thinking about Kevin Hart and his father.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So he's the litmus test for now, but we'll see how the other 2 when they come along.
I have to admit, I'm struggling a bit today, and I think a lot of Black parents are too, and parents across America. A lot of our minds tonight, the case of 16-year-old Ralph Yarl of Kansas City. His family says he went to pick up his siblings last Thursday and rang the doorbell of the wrong home. A white male homeowner inside shot him through the door, in the head and in the arm. There is some slight good news I saw coming over here that he is recovering and has left the hospital. So there's some good news there. But I've heard so many black parents, my parents, worried about this as well, that one day, black boys are considered cute and have chubby cheeks, and the next day, they're considered a threat. And also, there was a 2017 study at Georgetown Law Center on Poverty and Inequity that found that black girls are treated with less protection and nurturing than white girls of the same age, and that starts in preschool. They're adultified in preschool. So Dr. Grissom, why do we not treat black children as children, and how do we reassure children who have been adultified? And I know that's a compound question.
So first of all, I want to encourage parents to not allow people to adultify and sexualize your children. When you see it happen, stop it. Literally intervene. So I've had several occasions, and I'll share stories with you all about how I've interacted. And my husband actually says that I'm certifiably crazy because I respond in ways that are not typical. I tend to allow the people who have presented me with the distress and discomfort, I tend to allow them to carry it because I don't want it. And so I think one of the first things is that we need to be very active in ensuring that our children are not sexualized and adultified. So what does that mean? I'll share a story. I was working in a space, and this was, I can't tell too much because you can Google it and tell. So I was working in a space with coworkers, and my young son was going to need to come to my office afterwards. And so one of my colleagues' daughters was going to be there. And I'll set this up, the context. This is a white daughter and my black son. And so one of the comments that was made was, oh, well, our children are around 9-ish. Well, my daughter likes to flirt, so they'll have a great time. So my immediate response, because of course I was smiling before, I was like, eh, and I stopped smiling, and I said, no, I don't think of my son in that way, and I suggest you not to think of your daughter in that way. We're not handing out cookies today. And so just little slight comments of sexualizing your children. Being aware that your children aren't being adultified in churches, in schools, making sure that, on the street that people aren't whistling at your kids, or if they are, then to pause and let your kids know what's happening. I think the major challenge that parents have is just being really brutally honest with their black children. Again, your kids are going through these things, so speak to them about them in age-appropriate ways. I remember being adultified when I was a little girl. Most little girls develop faster than boys, and that's usually a shame for little girls. Little girls usually feel more insecure, have a lower self-esteem when they're developing faster. And so talking to your girls and your boys about their bodies and making sure that they understand that this is their space and that people aren't not only supposed to touch them, but to comment on them in sexual ways. So I think I may have gotten one part of your question. What was the other part?
Oh, sorry. I was, in your, I just wonder why and I don't know if you've ever studied, why are black children so adultified
Adultified.
in this, you know.
Well, I mean, we think about slavery. That's the first place I go back to. We were not human. We were objects, and we were objects who were made to produce other objects for other people. And people still think of us in that way. That, I mean, think about in terms of how our children are objectified for their athleticism. It's, oh, they can do X, Y, Z. I've seen several U of I basketball, men's basketball. They're talking about going pro, and the community is in a rage because they're not loyal. It's like, who said that you own them? And there's this undercurrent of not recognizing when you make those comments on Facebook, you're outing yourself. FYI. When you say, oh, they're not loyal, when has U of I been loyal to those children? And why is it that they have to be loyal? They're not property, they're not chattel. And so being aware that Black people's bodies, we've always been under assault. And this is just another form of assault, and our children are experiencing it.
Talk to us about parenting and joy that your kids have brought to you as being parents.
All right, I'll take this one. Joy that kids have brought to us. So I think that for us, parenting has been a huge joy because we started our parenting journey at 26, right? And so it was a critical time in my life. Just finished school, trying to get some gainful employment, had a decent job, found out we were pregnant, and we ended up relocating back to Champaign because she was already here. She started her program, spent the year in Chicago, the kid was born, we ended up relocating back here. And even though it was a struggle in terms of, because I sacrificed the job that I had up there to come down here. So even though the financial piece that I was used to having went away to take some employment that was, you know, not what I would have preferred, but I had to do what I had to do. The joy of having that little boy in the home was worth it all. Because he is so gregarious, he's vibrant, he's outspoken, he has a lot of my traits, but more of her traits, I think. Social justice lens, he has that. He loves social studies. Just a good, fun-loving kid. And so that helped, that helped to get me through my funk, right, of struggling to now find gainful employment. She was in school, so she had a teaching assistantship, and so she was working, and then she was doing counseling on the side, so she was hustling, I was hustling, and now we have this little boy as well. And it was nice because I was able to work, remotely, and I was able to keep him at home for the first year and a half, which was nice. And so the joy has just been extended now that the big gap has happened, obviously, because she was in school, she finishes, now we have 2 more. And so the joy is kind of like, I'm trying to find this balance now of joy because I'm older, right? And my energy is not what it used to be. When my oldest, I had a little more energy, I was a little younger. But now that I'm, much more seasoned, I realize that my energy is not what it used to be, yet it's nice having 2 that are closer in age, because now they can kind of, yes, they're freaking frack, and yes, they, fight like cats and dogs, and yes, one minute they're lovey-dovey, the next minute they're barking at each other, but it's nice because they can at least entertain themselves while I can try to find some moments of solitude. But overall, it has been an extremely joyful experience, and they have just shown me so much about myself that I didn't know I had. And until I'm met with whatever the situation is and how I have to deal with it. And patience has definitely been the biggest area that I've had to challenge myself to improve in. So, but it's been a joy.
And you?
I think I would come at it a little differently for me because I experienced a loss between our oldest and our 5-year-old. So and it was a stillbirth. And I remember vividly crying for 3 days and finally giving up and saying, okay, I can soldier on. So I've been very protective, I think, of our oldest in trying to help him navigate what it means to have loss and, you know, an absent presence, right? Someone who is present but also absent in our family. So watching him care for his little brother and sisters, watching his little brother and sister care for each other, and then for them caring for us, because sometimes they're the hug that I need. Sometimes they're the kiss on the cheek that I wanted. Sometimes they're the mommy, you look good in that I need in that moment. Like that brings a sense of joy and being able to know that I'm putting out in the world something that is gonna have and serve their purpose, their greater purpose, and recognizing that I'm contributing to the human family, human consciousness in a way that's productive, I think brings me a lot of joy.
Love that. Reginald?
Has rejoined us. What brings you joy about your daughters and granddaughters?
Well, with my older set, I birthed two, but I raised three. I adopted one of my nieces, and even though things had a tragic end with my eldest daughter, I still have joy. I still have joy. I have a peace about the situation. My second oldest daughter, she's working on her PhD right now. She's a professor at Tougaloo College. Her dissertation is on the adultification of Black girls in the media. So we are all right here together when it comes to what's going on in our society. My adopted daughter is coming into her own. She is a powerful woman of God. She can minister like nobody's business. And when I was in my space and dealing with my grief and having to take on, you know, this level of responsibility, she was the one who poured into me. And so that was amazing. And I don't want to get all emotional, but that was an amazing thing for me, and I'll never forget that. And so that brings me joy. Seeing these three move and grow and level up and deal with things on a different level. The 16-year-old, her teacher called today and there was a situation. She's like, well, I want you to know. I was like, oh God, when I answered that phone, because I wait for those calls from the school. It's just like, wait, what's going on? And she said, well, there's a situation, but I want to tell you how she handled it. She confronted it, she told me, she accepted her responsibility, and I just wanted to do a holy dance, and I was like, I'm doing one right now. And so just to see that growth in my grandchildren in the midst of trying to heal and get to a place of wholeness when it comes to their level of loss.
Thanks to our first panel, Todd Kato and Dr. Carolyn Randolph-Kato, the parents of 3 children, and mother and grandmother Cynthia Smith. Minutes later, our second discussion continued with a new panel of parents. Well, again, tonight we are talking about parenting Black children, and again, we have several perspectives. Joining Tracy up front, from left to right, is Dr. Dynesha Grissom. Joining us again, she is the founder of YMG Psychological Services, who provide services to children, adults, and emerging adults. And to her left, Robert A. White II. He is the Adult and Senior Programming Coordinator at the Douglass Annex in Champaign. He is a single father of 3 children, including twins. And to his left, Erik L. Felix is an entrepreneur, coach, and referee from Danville. He's a single father of 7, and his children range in age from 14 to 37. And here with me is Chandra Somerville, Cultural and Linguistics Competence Coordinator with the Champaign County Mental Health Developmental Disabilities Board. And she's going to talk about raising a child who is part of the LGBTQ community. And we've also got to mention that she is a proud member of our Community Advisory Board at Illinois Public Media. And thank you for that and everything, all your guidance for us. I want to welcome all of our panel for this interesting discussion.
All right, so give them a round of applause.
And if you have a question for any of our panelists, the number to text Question 2 is 217-803-0730, 217-803-0730. Tracy.
All right, so let me be a little personal here for a moment, if I could have your attention. So, Robert, one of our panelists here, there are some of you that know that I lost my dad about a year ago, almost about this time. And, you know, my mom and I are here, and, you know, so I'm just really protective of her, right? Want to know where she's at, what she's doing, and she's in Robert's seniors class in the morning. And she can't say enough about what you do to love and support. So, bruh, I gotta give that back to you. Thank you for what you do for my mother.
Well, we donate.
You got a great mom. You got a great mom, though. So it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So
Yeah,
you got a
thank
great
you.
mom. Yeah.
All right, so gentlemen, single fathers, single black men raising kids. I love it. Thank you. Talk to us about your parenting, your style, how you deliver your parenting to your kids. And Felix, we'll start with you, sir.
Well, I guess first of all, I have to start with how I was raised. So I was raised in a single parent household. First 12 years with my mom in Chicago, and the last 6 years in Danville with my dad. So it was two different parenting styles. My mom was hands-on. If you know what hands-on is, you hands-on. My dad was laid back. So I have probably more of my dad's parenting style laid back as opposed to my mom's, because I know my mom's way. I didn't care nothing about getting no whooping, getting put on punishment. So I was more laid back. I talked more. With my oldest son, which he's 37, I raised him for about 2 years till he was 16. And I went on vacation. Like I said, I have a story to tell. We could be here all day. But my last two, which are the 16 and the 14-year-old, it's a different generation of parenting. You have to be on top of social media. You have to be on top of their friends. And I'm one of those parents that think that I'm in the know because I'm a DJ. So I think that I know everything that's going on, but I don't. Like Doctor said, there's a whole nother world that you parents don't know about with these video games. The video games, they can talk. They don't have to be on the phone. They can talk through those video games. They can send messages through those video games. You never have a clue. There's stuff going on in the school system right now where different fractions are going through things. Those are things you have to navigate. Like in Danville, we got middle school games, and they've had big melees in the school where it's just out of control. And my 16, he's 16 now, but he gravitates to that. He gravitates to the foolishness. So I have to be on him from the time he wakes up until the time he go to sleep, and then I still got to. So it's a challenge with these teenagers now because there's so much going on out here in these streets that we don't know about. You know, we know about the shooting and all of that, but we don't know how it comes to be. And I don't know how we fully get a hold of that unless we confiscate the phones and the video games.
Robert?
Well, first, I would have to, even though they said I'm a single parent, a single dad, I do have to give some homage to my kid's mother because she is in their life as well. We're just raising them in completely separate households.
Same.
So that brings a struggle in itself because I have a structure with how I raise my kids, and then maintaining that structure and that discipline when they go over to their mom's house who doesn't have the same type of structure is always somewhat difficult. But I have a 12-year-old son and they have 9-year-old twins, boy and girl twins. So I am getting to that age with trying to empower my daughter. She, we just started buying the little sports bras, and I was mad uncomfortable because I'm calling my mom and I'm like, so how am I supposed to talk to her about this?
Just breast.
Right. But still, so I'm getting to that age because I know I was raised by a extremely strong black mother, and so I got the hugs, I got the love, the compassion. I was raised in that, but then my mother was military, so there were very strict boundaries. So I'm able to have boundaries with my kids, but I give them the space to be themselves because they're all completely different. And then because I recognize the fact that your mom isn't here with us, how that can affect you, because I know how important my mom was to me. So I try to be as nurturing as a 37-year-old black guy can be. And I just try to give them the space to do their thing. But I'm also I watch this show on Hulu called Parent Test, and I would consider myself a helicopter parent because I'm literally over everything. You talk about the phone. Well, some of you guys know I used to sell cell phones, so I have an app on my phone that monitors what my son does on the phone. So I'm shutting the phone off at 9 o'clock at night. Yep, go to bed. How did you do that? Don't worry about it. So I'm in that generation where I'm a little bit knowledgeable, but I'm so involved in everything. If their shoelace is untied, the school is calling me saying, hey, Robin's shoelace is untied. We just wanted to let you know. Just to make sure you know. But then my job is across the street. I'm at Douglass, the school's at BTW. My son's acting up. I'm in the classroom before the teacher even sends him to the office. So I want to provide that presence of authority as a dad, but then I still want you to still be yourself and then still have the space so that you can still have some room for their mom too. So,
Robert, in our planning meeting, you talked about, and you used the word modeling. Can you talk about what that means to the audience in your parenting?
I'm the example. My mom always told me that kids are sponges, so everything they see, they're gonna reflect that. They're just your mirror. And when I had a son, my first son, I was still in college, so I was still wild, But then when I had that daughter, when she came out first, and I knew my life had changed in that moment, because not only are you looking at me as a black man, I also have to set example for you when you're out here dating. This is what these little vacations to Houston, we not going for that, We not going for that. I have to set the example and model the behaviors of a black man so that you recognize that, and then set the examples for my sons, because I'm literally, they're gonna mimic everything that I do, how I talk, how I engage with people and everything. So that's the optics is very important to me, because the optics that they see of black men on social media, on TV, in different situations is not as positive. Because like you said, I have a stable job, I have a home, I just recently got engaged, so I'm bringing in the whole family dynamics for their sake. Really that's really what I do it for, because they didn't ask to be here. So
Or parenting differ from what you knew growing up?
Because I was raised in a two-parent home, and my son was raised with just me by myself, that was a huge difference. My parents had an expectation that I would have gotten married, then decided to have children, but it happened differently. So that was one of the big things that was different, and I did not realize how much they really matched each other. One of the things, and just to be clear, I'm not parenting, quote unquote, anymore. My son is 28 years old. We're on another side. So just to be clear about that, and one of the things that I get to do now, which is fun, is ask, like, hey, what kind of parent was I? And he told me it wasn't a dictatorship. It wasn't a democracy. You were a republic, kind of in the middle. You would listen, you would hear, you would also have boundaries. And so that's what needed to happen for me. And I'm grateful for that. And one of the things they also shared with me was that you always listened to me. There was something that happened, and Adrian disclosed that someone had thrown him in a dryer. And I said, okay, how do we handle this? Whenever you go over there, they just need adult supervision. He's 3 years old when he tells me this. I choose, because it could have been, I could have gone and reacted and done all of these different things, but who would Adrian have if I would have totally just reacted? We were in a whole nother state. We were not close to my family at that time. I had to listen to Adrian. And Adrian totally compliments and says, Mom, you've always listened to me and what I had to say. So my parenting style was a republic, not a dictatorship or a democracy.
So Dr. Grissom, parenting today is difficult, and we've heard everyone talk about the impact of social media and change in our society. What's your thoughts on what you want to share with the audience on what we're talking about today? I saw you making some notes.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to kind of give you and Robert props, because what you all did was model intimacy for men, and that doesn't happen often. So thank you for being vulnerable, and thank you for engaging with him around that. I think a lot of times, what we miss with kids is getting in their spaces, and the way that we can get in their spaces by modeling behaviors. And so what you all did was beautiful, because you acknowledged another black man for his involvement in your mother's life, and he acknowledged your mother and how wonderful she is. So we need more of that.
Don't be trying to make me cry.
I'm not. I don't have the Oprah effect. But one of the biggest things that we do as parents is we step back. And there was this period of time when you would ask a psychologist, how do I interact with my kids, and they're teenagers, and they want their space. And I've always been against giving kids their space, because oftentimes that has meant distancing yourself as a parent. Instead of giving them their space, find another way to interact with them. So yes, they need time to calm down. I don't know if we as parents recognize how intense a school day is, but it's much different than when we were in school. I'm 40 plus. I lie most of the time, and I say I'm 30 something, but school is different, and there's a lot of just things that are bombarding our children on a daily basis. And so when they come home, just like when we come home, I have a jazz room. It's about 10 by 10. And I think my family knows when I come home and I make a beeline to the room, I had a rough day. So they leave me alone for about 30 minutes till they hear Miles, and then it's probably like, oh, she's okay. But they need the same space, but we also need to re-engage. So finding a way to re-engage with your kids, because otherwise they're gonna be like this, and this is who they're going to engage with, and we don't know who that is. So earlier, Mr. Felix, you were saying that, you know, kids can talk through the video games. Literally, a headset gives them access to everybody and anybody, and you don't know who that everybody and anybody is. So being aware that you are your children's models, and so however you interact with other adults, however you interact during your day, the things that you say, the things that you find yourself interested in, your children are going to take interest in that. Include them, engage them, so that they don't have to be engaged by a phone or by video games. It's very important, it's crucial, because at this point in time, our phones and computers are raising our children. Computer games are raising our children, and that's not what we want. We don't want them desensitized to violence. We don't want them to see blood and think, this is something to videotape. That's not what we want. We want our kids to be compassionate. We want them to have empathy. We want them to be connected to one another as humans so that they can participate in our society in a healthy way.
And you know what, I understand that, but I have a son that he has lost more friends than I have, and I'm 57 years old. He's lost more friends to gun violence and death than I have, and I'm 56 years old. So trying to reach a 13 or 14-year-old kid, and I coach football, I referee basketball, and trying to reach these kids, being compassionate and trying to, it's hard because my son, I can't reach him. I'm gonna be real with you.
Yeah.
I can't reach my 16-year-old son. And I coach kids, and I've been able to reach other people's kids, and I can't reach my 16-year-old. Do you know how that makes me feel? Woo! 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 And I'm gonna be real with you. We're at a point where he now lives with his mother because one of us or both of us was gonna go to jail. So it was in his best interest and his livelihood and my livelihood that he come back to Champaign. And one of the reasons that he was living with me is because the Champaign School District could not diagnose his ADHD and his autism for acting out. But he was a smart kid. 7 years old, he figured, hey, if I act out, I ain't got to do no schoolwork. Unit 4? Unit 4 couldn't figure that out. I have a support system in Danville. My girls I grew up with, they are educators. I brought him to Danville, hands-on. First 2 days in school, she figured him out. Oh, okay, we got you. You're gonna learn something today, partner. You're not going home. You're not getting sent. None of this. You're gonna walk down the hallway, cool down for a minute, and you're gonna read this book and you're gonna do this work. And we made steps for 7 years. So up until the start of this school year, he was the first one to get kicked out of school. And then he decided to break in a vape shop. He kicked out of school, breaks in the vape shop, goes back to the school he kicked out of to try and sell the vapes. This is his mindset. His mindset at 16 is that he wants to get money fast. He see me hustle every day. I DJ, I have a lawn service, I referee. He sees me all day working. And the lawn service is his business. It's called Jules Get You Right Lawn Service. He was making $300-400 a week, but he got to work. He don't want to work. He wants that fast lick. He wants the lick. So that's what I'm dealing with this guy.
Yeah.
He wants the lick. He don't want to work, and it's tough. Tough.
I appreciate you being honest regarding recognizing that you can't reach your son. I think it's very important that we not dismiss our village. And if you don't know who's in your village, you need to find you a village, because none of us can parent on an island. And so, I think the challenge that we have is nowadays the expectation is that we all do it by ourselves and that we not have any help. And that's not necessarily how we were raised. I remember coming home, I was a latchkey kid, and my next door neighbors made sure that I wasn't doing foolishness, which meant Dynesha didn't go outside. If I stepped outside the door, Miss Smith, baby, what you doing? Taking out the trash. Okay, well go get the trash so you can take it out. So literally having a village, and what does that look like? That doesn't have to be grandma, because sometimes grandmas nowadays ain't the person you want in your village. That doesn't have to be grandpa. That can be next door neighbors. That can be friends. That could be people up at the schools, mentors. That could be coaches. So it's not imperative that you meet your child, but I always tell people, look, I'm out here saving y'all's kids. If you see my kid, can somebody save him, please? So if I see your kid cutting up and he'll respond to me, then I'm going to talk to him. If you see mine cutting up and he responds to you, then you talk to him. It's not an expectation that we do this all alone. And if you don't have a village, you need to start finding those people to make a part of your village. All kids need some godmommies, some goddaddies, some goduncles, some cousins, some whatever. Find your village. It's imperative.
Chandra, you talked with us in our pre-interview about your son identifying as gay and using they, them pronouns. Could you walk us through that journey as a parent?
So this happened when Adrian became an adult. So it wasn't something that I could parent away. It was something that I needed to do to respect my child. It was about respecting who Adrian had become and not necessarily saying, well, I don't agree or disagree with what you were doing. It was about just respecting what they asked me to do moving forward. And so sometimes as parents, because we weren't raised that way, or we didn't have that belief, or we know that this is something that is not considered what is in the Bible, we're not going to do this because this is what you were born. What if I, as Adrian's mother, decided just not to respect who they were as a human? Is that Christ-like? Is that being a Christian? Is that being loving? So I chose as their mother. And one of the beauty things is that Adrian does give me grace, because when Adrian was born, they were a boy. That is what they were born as. I know that. As an adult, this was a decision that they made and then incorporated me into their decision. I know you're gonna struggle, and I'm always respectful. And so that has been our journey, is that I've tried to just make sure that I was respectful. And Adrian also respects me as their mother as well. So it really is about those boundaries, but we also love each other, number one. And the second thing is that we really do respect each other as adults.
Dr. Grissom, now more than ever, people are encouraged to live their truths, being LGBTQ+, or accepting gender roles that are not in the norm as what society tells you. At the same time, we know Black communities are among the most religious and sometimes the least accepting. And how do you work through those concerns with Black children?
That's a rough one. Because the reason it's rough is because someone can come to my office and feel affirmed, and they can feel heard and listened to and cared for and loved, and then they go out into the world and they feel none of those things. So there's one little space where they do, and then they go into the world and they don't. And so really helping them to internalize how significant, how important, how beautiful they are. And being aware that they need allies and helping them to connect with those allies. So that ally may not be your birth family. That ally, those allies may be your family of choice. And so what is a family of choice? A family of choice are people who accept you for who you are and aren't rejecting of you. And so that could be your friend's family, that could be a friend, that could be teachers. And so helping those individuals identify people who will align with them and be their family of choice. I find it so challenging. I love the way you said that, Chandra, when you said, what would it be like for me as Adrian's mother to reject them? And I don't think we really consider that. In any matter, but specifically around someone's gender identity or their sexuality. What would it be like for you to enter your home, feel like all of you is different inside than what is represented outside, and the people who, let's be very honest, you have your first relationships with. This is your first concept of a system, is your home. That is also your first experience with God in your home, are your parents. And to be rejected, how then do you look at yourself in the world, and how do you expect the world to interact with you if the people who are supposed to love you the most have rejected you? And so I really want to impress upon, I don't care what you think is kosher or not kosher, or acceptable or not acceptable, or whether you appreciate or don't appreciate using pronouns. Didn't nobody ask you. If someone's name has shifted or changed, call them by their name. We grew up calling people Dookie and Boo Boo. Thank God mine was Niecy. It was cool. If you can call somebody by a nickname and we not blink an eye when you hear Lil Dookie, can you call somebody by the name that they have identified as? What is wrong with that? I think as a society we have come to a place where we have decided that empathy and compassion take the back seat to our beliefs and our values and what we want for you. Well, if we continue to do that, you're going to continue to push people away, and you will no longer be a part of the family of choice. And I feel sorry for you because you're going to miss a whole lot of stuff. So I guess in some ways, my biggest emphasis is on helping that child, especially a teenager, identify a healthy community to be a part of, and help them set healthy emotional boundaries, because that's the hardest piece. When everyone around you is telling you how much they dislike you, how much you're not good enough, how much they want you to be different, and no one is accepting you for who you are. I know we have issues, in the Black community in particular. Some of that is because we're Black, and we already have 12 strikes against us because someone has decided that the color of our skin is a problem. And so a lot of parents get fearful when their child comes to them and says, hey, mom, dad, I identify as this. It's, oh no, now here's another strike against them. How will they be received? Well, imagine what it would be like if instead of rejecting them, you embrace them and find out. They understand that you just found out today. They're going to give you space to learn. What would it be like for them in their experience if you embraced them, if you affirmed them? You don't have to agree. That's your child. Just love them. If you are a follower of Christ, the first commandment is to love. Period. So all the other stuff is unacceptable. Love. And I never saw Christ walk up. Well, I didn't see Christ, but I never read about Christ walking up to the richest of the rich and the greatest of the great and saying, can I help you? Christ walked up to prostitutes. I was going to say another word, I'm sorry. Christ walked up to prostitutes and said, can I help you? Those who were rejected, can I help you? Follow me, follow love. So if nothing more, love.
I have a question that was texted into us. Recently, I experienced a program designed for Black boys. Upon noticing that the students in the program curse regularly every day throughout the year, when the issue was brought to the director as a problematic issue, the director's response was, that's just their culture. Any response to that? Any of our panelists have a response to that?
Can you say it again?
So there was a program designed for Black boys, and the students were cursing regularly every day throughout the year. And when the issue was brought to the director as a problematic issue, the director's response was, that's just their culture.
Was that at Unit 4?
I don't have any specifics on location.
I mean, I think that has to go back to the director of that program to allow that, because as a coach, as a referee, I do not allow that language in my presence. Now, they cussing. Don't get it messed up. They cussing because every record that they listen to got cuss words in it. So they are cussing, but if you as the adult in their presence allow that, then that's on you, because I don't allow it. Like the bro stuff, not in my house. When I was growing up, yes ma'am, yes sir, to any adult, and that's where we have gotten away from. We have gotten so lax. Like, I remember going to church. You couldn't go to church in no jeans. I had 3 mix and match suits. So every Sunday, I had a different suit, different look. I had a white shirt, I had a blue shirt, I had a brown shirt and a black shirt, and I had a black tie, a white tie, and a plaid tie, mix and match. And I learned how to shine my shoes. We couldn't afford to buy no $200 and $300 shoes every week. These kids are afforded $200 and $300 shoes they want every week, or once or twice a month. We have gotten away from life. I mean, I don't know, but the way that we were brought up, we turned out all right. And I guess as being a parent myself, I wanted better for my kids, so I succumbed to but I still can't break down and buy no $200 sneakers.
I don't know, in response to that, like, I can appreciate the fact knowing that, you don't allow as a coach, you don't allow cursing, but I would expect that because you're from the culture. From the standpoint of a person that's not of the culture, they're going to pervert what they might think our culture is accepting of, because in reality, I don't know any black home that allows cursing. I'm 37 and I don't even curse in front of my mom to this day. The bro stuff, me and my son, we say bro back and forth to each other all the time. He's 12, but he recognizes, as a parent, you can switch that tone up, and then they understand, like, oh, okay, my bad, Dad, let me chill. But I like, because of his age, and that the bro term is kind of my age also.
Hey.
So it's kind of like, hey, when I talk to him, I'm like, yeah, bro, you need to go do your homework. He'd be like, all right, Dad. But there's still that level of respect. But in regard to that, a person not, oh, that's just their culture. That's someone from the outside not having any cultural awareness and not really respecting the culture. Because no matter what we do, no matter, one thing that I do with my kids, no matter what we do, when you walk into a room, you're black. So whatever you do is part of your culture. Period. It doesn't, my son wants to be a Lego designer. That is now black culture. Lego designing is now black culture as of today. So, that's just the vibe that we have. So when I hear someone say something like that, or I get that energy, I mean, that's pretty typical. And, you touched on it earlier. That's in our education, that's pretty typical for most people that aren't as a person of color. They're not very aware of what the actual culture is, and they come to their own conclusions. But then what'd you say, they don't actually really care what we're doing or what's going on. Oh yeah, let them keep cursing, because when they go out to the real world, they're not gonna get a job. No one's gonna hire them because they're cursing or doing this thing. So they're not raising these black girls and boys to be prolific community members. They're not raising them to be great community members. They're raising them to stay in the level that the whole system is set up to, but that would be a whole nother discussion for another day. So yeah, that's my response. That just sounds like somebody that's not aware of the culture, that really doesn't care about our black and brown babies.
Yeah. If you let someone define who you are, they will get you utterly wrong. Now, who was that? Michelle Obama said something of that nature. I just tore it all up. But I think part of kind of our experience, meaning older folks' experience growing up, there was, we were taught how to code switch. That was a part of our growing up. That was embedded in who we are. So we talked a certain way and walked a certain way when we went to church. We talked a certain way and we walked a certain way when we went to school. We talked a certain way and walked a certain way when we were at home. And then when we were in the community, we talked a certain way and walked a certain way. My son, I probably am the cursor in the house. My mouth is vicious, but mostly because it's around social justice and I'm cussing about some stuff that done happen. I would be concerned about, number one, context. Who was saying this? And what was the intention? And if it was just a flippant, oh, that's their culture. Well, what culture are you talking about? Are you talking about teenage culture? Are you talking about black culture? Are you talking about boy culture? What culture are you talking about specifically? And that would have been my response to the person. Oh, culture, what do you mean by that? Can you say more about that? What does that mean? And that is what we are charged with as adults. When we hear things like that, not to overlook it and just, oh, I know what they were talking about there, because what happens then is we are now holding the distress, we are holding the frustration when the other is the one who said it. I want you to hold it. Explain to me what you just meant. Explain to me what you just said. So I'm just gonna really politely repeat back to you what you said. It's their culture. Well, what does that mean? And then I'm going to leave it for you to answer.
Thanks to our second panel, parents Robert A. White, Erik L. Felix, and Chandra Somerville, and much gratitude to Dr. Dynesha Grissom of YMG Psychological Services for joining us for both discussions. Share your thoughts about our program at newsbrewsbeatz.org. You can also watch older episodes, including interviews with the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign Chancellor Robert Jones, or interviews with the superintendents of the Champaign, Danville, and Urbana school districts on the Illinois Public Media YouTube channel. News, Brews, and Beats is a production of Illinois Public Media.